Please stand for the Chair of Thanet District Council.
Good evening, councillors and officers of the council and members of the press and public. I welcome you to this extraordinary meeting of the council. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security doors to my right or opposite the lifts in the foyer. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured. I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? Thank you. Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take this opportunity to leave the meeting. Any filming or recording will not be permitted for any item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered following the exclusion of the press and public from the meeting. Would everyone please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst this meeting is in progress. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Have a few. Here are the names. Councillors Braidwood, Crittenden, Evans, Paul Moore, Fellows, Packman, Dennis. Are there any more? Apologies for absence. Councillor Austin. Thank you.
Councillor Munns and Councillor Yates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone over here?
Councillor Bayford, Councillor Fellows.
Bayford and Fellows. We've got Fellows. Thank you.
And Moore.
Got Paul Moore. Yes, thank you.
Apologies from Councillor Ara, Councillor Faruqi, Councillor Keane, Councillor Pope, Councillor Dabro and Councillor W. Scobie.
Thank you.
There's a few bugs going around.
Okay. Thanks very much. Are there any, said that, announcements? I'd like to welcome, I think, Councillor Oxborough. Welcome to our council meeting. You'll find we are a happy family. And as you can see, it's panto season. So apart from that, I have no other announcements to make. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? There's a big fat no to that one. Item agenda 4, local government reorganisation. That's why we're here. So, Councillor Everett, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight, Council is asked to make a recommendation to help Cabinet make a choice about our preferred model for local government reorganisation. Each of Kent's 14 councils must make such a choice in the knowledge that their own choice will not be decisive. The final decision will be made by the Secretary of State after a public consultation next year. So in that sense alone, tonight does not feel like a weighty decision. Whatever is decided tonight, we understand that all models still on the table will go forward because each has another council supporting it. This is not a popularity poll, and when a majority of Surrey councils decided that they preferred 3 unitaries, as subsequently did the Surrey public, the Secretary of State decided there would be 2. Each council is required to choose and justify an option that covers the whole of Kent and Medway. Yet it would be bizarre to imagine that the interests of Sevenoaks are much in our thoughts tonight, just as it would be strange if they thought much about us. The models themselves, however, do reflect broader interests. I would argue that a 4 unitary model is a more balanced way to delineate Kent and Medway's 1.9 million people around the government's guideline of 500,000 people per unitary. I would argue that 4 unitaries will ultimately provide better governance when we eventually secure a combined authority, giving a stronger voice at that table to Kent's coastal communities. Throughout the last year, Kent councils have worked more or less harmoniously together to develop proposals. All of the models, however, have inevitably been designed with an element of self-interest in focus. Throughout the process, 4 relatively affluent West Kent authorities have stuck to their view that they should be together in a new unitary. In the north, Dartford and Gravesham have devised their own 5 unitary model in order to resist what some there see as a takeover by the county's existing unitary, Medway, and instead propose to divide that unitary along the river. Their East Kent unitary is too small. Swale has been intent on avoiding being swallowed by Medway, or as an alternative, its own dismemberment, and particularly the loss of Faversham to East Kent. Folkestone and Hythe does not want to be chopped up by Medway's 4 unitary proposal and wishes to cling to Ashford, with which it shares the M20 and the railway route to France, and also to Dover, who in turn have taken a different view. Folkestone also rejects being bundled into partnership with Swale, whose unfortunate role is to be Billy No-Mates in this process. Dover, Thanet and Canterbury have shared the view that a 4 unitary model is the better option and that we should stand together. The leaderships of Ashford and Thanet have rejected the idea that there is any real affinity between us, and each of us has said that a 3 unitary model would simply be too big. Geography means we have little alternative but to join with our 2 neighbours. The question for us was always, who else, if anyone? From our parochial perspective, the only difference between 4B and 4D, the Medway option, is the addition of Folkestone Town and Faversham Town, for both of which a case can be made. Ultimately, however, the Medway model is problematic because it creates so many changes to the boundaries of existing districts, each of which must be justified and will have an uncertain effect on timescales, even if support for that process can be garnered in Whitehall. More damagingly, it proposes a very wide disparity between the size of its proposed West and North Kent unitaries, which seems hard for government to allow when these authorities would be equally represented on the combined authority. Option 4B is cleaner, tidier and more compact for East Kent. It allows a level of councillor representation that is realistic and in line with existing unitaries, while keeping the overall size of the council to the manageable proportions at 65, without the risk of large numbers of members having no committee role under the now mandatory leader and cabinet model. At the almost comical extreme, we have Kent County Council's self-serving plan for each councillor to serve 11,500 voters, with perhaps 9 unitary councillors for the whole of Thanet. The casework implications of that alone are horrendous, for residents seeking help, as well as for those elected to provide it. Even the current Kent County councillors might shudder if they understood the breadth and depth of the casework that many district councillors do each week, without their compensation of being the highest paid elected councillors in England. I have been a unitary councillor, and I know from that most casework is at what is currently district level. The KCC proposal is being advanced on the narrow basis that it will save money, but it is deeply anti-democratic and impractical, as well as wholly non-compliant with devolution, which requires more than one authority to form a combined authority. Like so much else we hear from reform at Maidstone and elsewhere, it is hot air and it will go nowhere. Of course, money matters, and we have extensive business cases before us drawn up by KPMG. Inevitably, they will tell you that the fewer unitaries you have, the cheaper it is. But after we discard the cartoon option, the differences are trivial once put in the context of the several billions spent by Kent's 14 councils each year. The reality too is that the financial cases are best guess scenarios, with KPMG unable to reach a consensus with Kent's finance officers. In the same way that our precept is swamped by KCCs in our residents' bills, this council's debt and level of reserves, and that of our district neighbours, are small beer in the bigger picture of KCC's financial black hole. We will not solve local government's financial crisis through reorganisation, but only through complete reform of the funding system. The formula must reflect East Kent's particular needs, not government seek to mitigate shortfall in minor ways by aligning Thanet with faraway places of which we know little. For all the challenges entailed, local government reorganisation will bring a new level of resilience and clarity for residents and staff to the authority that replaces this one. It will be more efficient. If its boundaries are respectful of place and local identity, then it will be a positive move for Thanet. I believe that means 4B should be that preferred option for this council, and I move that council recommends that option to Cabinet tonight.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Orban, thank you. Okay, well, we're open to debate, so the floor is yours. Who'd like to say something? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. In this group, we agree that 4B is the least worst option. But as a group that does not operate whipping, I have been asked by my group if we can all vote the same way this evening and abstain, because we feel that the whole concept of what is being done here is too fast, too big, too concerned about money, and generally not going to be beneficial to our residents except in the very, very long term. Indeed, I think I may not live to see it. We accept that in principle, getting rid of the extra tier of authority is a good thing. It would prevent, for example, or at least we hope it would prevent, the debacle that we have at the moment with the KCC, the port, etc., and the tunnel in Ramsgate, which is so disappointing and so angering to residents. On the other hand, the disadvantages massively outweigh that. We have authorities that are too big. They're 1.5 times the largest size of a London borough, which leads to considerable democratic deficit, where we have no plans to raise the powers of town and parish councils to compensate. As Councillor Everett commented, we're already, many of us, flat out with casework, and that is going to be extremely difficult to manage, particularly in disadvantaged areas like this. It's too fast. We understand why the need for speed before the next election, but actually the level of stress on officers in particular, we've already heard about from the Chief Executive, the expectation that people will be working with evenings and weekends. That's going to have an adverse effect on people's physical and mental health, and it's not going to improve our efficiency. Realistically, if people are doing 2 jobs, we've seen this in this council in the past, they're not really able to do them to the best of their ability. And the particular concern is that the focus is about saving money. We saw this with the various previous government legislation. This should not be about saving money. This should be about looking at how systems work properly, what is the best thing for residents, and how do we rearrange local government in such a way that it works well. This is not that. There is no consideration of funding. Indeed, the Surrey decision appears to have been made entirely on the basis of what is cheapest. We cannot vote for this, much as we see why it appears to be necessary, because at the end of the day, there is no point in whatever we vote. The Secretary of State will make his decision. We are disappointed that we found ourselves in this situation, but we can do no other. So we will be abstaining. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, hooked up. Interesting debate, and there's an interesting point raised by Councillor Austin, where she said the focus is on money saving. And given that this whole process is underpinned by the devolution bill, I think the clue needs to be in the name, that this is about devolution. It should be about politics of place, not politics of the pound. And this is about giving a localised voice to the people. Some of us have believed in this type of devolution and moved forward for many years. The debate tonight, if there's a debate, isn't whether we should or shouldn't. The debate is this is coming down the track and what's best for the people of East Kent. And I think it's therefore really important that we express opinions. Our group, we have a divided consensus, if you like. However, the fact is the devolution bill is live. It has some really very real implications in it, and this is what needs to be debated as well. But that's for the ongoing situation, and perhaps most valid during the public consultation, because after all, this is about the people. It's actually not about what really anyone's opinion is. It's about finding a model that we can present to the people that they will be happy to be governed by. The current system has proven too unwieldy. It isn't working, and joined up thinking is never more obviously needed than when we look at situations as the reference tunnel, where there's a disconnect in the dialogue between county and district. So, but again, without getting into the whys, this is about the hows, and I do believe, and many of us believe, that the 4 option is in fact the best option. Probably the best. There's not the best of a bad bunch, but nothing's ever going to be perfect for everyone's opinion. However, what it does mean is that the roughly 20 councillors that will represent Thanet will have an effective voice in that chamber, given the overall numbers. Whereas a 3-unitary system will still yield about the same number within 1 or 2 of councillors for Thanet, who will be in a worse situation than we are now, where we have been described as the pimple on the end or the poor relation. So let's not put on steroids the situation that we're trying to get away from. Let's respect the fact that whilst we do all disagree in various aspects of this, devolution and a voice for the people is a really important thing. One of the main concerns is that we do not have a mayoral system being implemented at the same time as this, because I do think that accountability to the public is part of the key part of this devolution. But again, these are things that, and I'll be very quick, Chair, but these are matters that we... Who's got the button? Thank you, Charles. No, these are matters that we can engage on, we can debate on, but as the leader has said tonight, none of us need to die in a ditch. We just need to make sure that all the options are on the table and we don't end up with too narrow a selection to choose from, like, for instance, 5 and 4D, which would be absolute nightmare. I don't even want to mention 1 because it doesn't even bear thinking about, because it's completely illegal under the incoming legislation, by the way. So, but anyway. So I look forward to an interesting debate and how we all vote, but I'm sure this will move forward, and I'd like to thank the Chief Executive and the leader for the work they've done bringing this to the stage it's at, and all others, because obviously there's a team involvement here. But I do think that we're being given, finally, belatedly, the chance of a voice, and that will get stronger in the new year. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, for your gracious contribution. Thank you. Councillor Cabright.
I read your email, Chair, so I'll keep it going quite quickly. Councillor Austin made the point, and I just want to jump on that. According to this business plan, and I know we can take these with an enormous pinch of salt, the savings delivered by the 4B will be in 7 years, so let's hope you are around to see that, because it's not really very long. I think it's really important, not just from a commercial perspective, because I think the money is a massive pinch of salt, and I think, as Councillor Everett's already alluded to, those savings will be delivered over time. But I have a dream. I have a dream when I don't have to go on Facebook and explain that TDC don't fix potholes. I have a dream when I don't have to jump on Facebook and say, do you know what, no, your Reform KCC councillor didn't get your bin collected. This is about people getting closer to what really matters in their life, right? This is about people understanding that when they contact the council, they won't be passed from pillar to post. This will be, yes, I have a problem with my child's schooling, I can go to my local councillor, they will be able to sort it out. At the moment, we have this complicated, rambling policy that or system that just doesn't really work for everyday people, and it is much, much simpler for those who are lucky enough to live in areas where there is a unitary, and I previously lived in a unitary, so I know that. And I think that's the valuable thing, right? And the one thing I would also say is I favour a 4 unitary, and I have absolutely nothing against Faversham or Folkestone. I think they'd both be more than welcome to join us in our lovely community. But I'm going to side with the 4B option. What I would say, though, is it's really important that we keep democracy at the heart of this. My worry with from a practical perspective, my worry with a 3 unitary option is that the geographical scale of it is it's going to really limit who can sit on that council. I mean, some of us those of us who sit on planning are quite often here to past 11 o'clock at night. If you're stuck in a council meeting in Ashford or Tankerton or somewhere, you're going to really struggle to get home. So I think there's that element of allowing people who work full time to serve on councils is really important. So I'll be supporting 4B.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not hugely surprised by the Green position, mainly because there was an announcement from Kent Green several days ago saying that none of these would be supported, which somewhat undermines the whipping argument slightly. However, it's not that it very much did. However, as I've discussed at length with many members here, I do have concerns about the size of unitaries when it comes to more rural communities. We know how they can work within city concepts. We know that there are efficiencies related to how residents understand and interact with councils, because, as Councillor Bright said, you know exactly where you're going. You know that all of your services sit with one council, and as a resident, that's something that makes an awful lot of sense. I think the concern for us as an area is that we are a very deprived area. We are an area that is often on the edge of things, and we are an area with unique characteristics. And that means that I would argue we need to be as engaged as possible in this process rather than stepping away from it. I don't agree that there is no point in making a decision. I don't agree that abstaining is sensible, because we are here to show the community that we have looked at these options and we are actually fighting for their best interests in relation to what will come forward. And the idea that there is no difference between 4B and 1 in terms of how well we can serve residents is extraordinary. I'll be very open, and Councillor Everett knows this. I was a firm advocate of 5 unitaries because I thought that made more sense in terms of being able to serve communities. The nature of geography around here makes that very, very difficult. And so I am also in support of a 4 unitary, and a 4 unitary that makes the most sense in terms of geography. But this is going to be a time of singular change, and it's one that we need to be prepared to support residents through, and we need to be able to explain exactly what's going on and be able to bring forward something that genuinely works for our area, and that's the most important outcome that needs to come forward. Thank you.
Councillor Cupp. Councillor Bright, could you turn your mic off, please?
Thank you, Chair. I fear that I may upset the apple cart a little bit now. I've always supported devolution in stripping out duplication, simplifying how we work, and building councils that truly deliver for residents. And the options in front of us tonight, I believe that 3A is the strongest, most workable and most balanced model, and that's why I will be backing it if I had that option. Is it perfect? It absolutely is not, but I don't think any of these options in front of us tonight are. But 3A is the one that I believe gives us stability and also can still give us a meaningful local voice. I completely understand the attraction to the 4 unitary models. People want identity, they want representation, and in Thanet especially, people want reassurance they won't be sidelined. But I think, to be honest, people deserve more than just a voice. They deserve a council that's strong enough to back them and one that's able to make change happen. And a smaller authority can absolutely feel closer, but if it can't fund social care, invest in regeneration or support joined up services, residents end up with less influence, not more. And the single council model put forward by KCC would take decisions further away from communities, not closer. A structure serving nearly 2 million people simply cannot give Thanet meaningful influence, and it centralises power at the expense of our local voices. Now, 3 unitaries provide financial stability, service alignment, investment capacity and preserved local identity, and for Thanet, this provides a more solid and influential platform in East Kent. So for me, this comes down to a council that's too small can't protect our services, a council that's too fragmented can't plan long term, and a council that can't invest can't claim to represent its community. So 3A, as I have said, is not perfect, but for me it's the most realistic, it's the sustainable option, and it's the capable option for delivering real devolution, real accountability, and real results for our residents. So unfortunately, I will not be backing 4B tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Orban.
Thank you, Chair. So I was so enamoured by Councillor Cupp there that I forgot I was on next. I think, as far as I'm concerned, you know, having been talking to some of our residents and trying to explain to them the ins and outs of local government reorganisation, certainly wasn't the best conversations I've ever had. However, what became evident was that our residents feel that they're more closely associated with both Dover and Canterbury, that we're sat at the end with them around us. And certainly for me, right at the start of all of this, 4B as it's been numbered and lettered, is the best one as far as I'm concerned, and certainly which I think the majority of our residents will associate with. And I actually think that is the way forward for us. But as the leaders said, you know, at the end of the day, whatever ones go forward, they're all likely to go, that they will all go forward for consideration by government. One lot will be picked, and then we're stuck with whatever that is. I don't, you know, as much as I like Councillor Austin, I don't support her view at all, or her group's view of saying, well, we don't really like what's going on. We're not happy about it, but it's taking place. Do it. Get involved. Otherwise, you're out on your own. You know, get involved and deal with it. One of those options. Pick one of those options and go for it. You know, that's what we've got to do. That's what we're here for. Because once you start abstaining and not taking part in anything, you know, you might as well not be here. So that's not saying a lot for your group and your residents. So, Chair, I'm hopeful that this chamber will fully support 4B. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wing.
And it's I'm glad to be in a room where people's views are actually respected, but I think we're missing the elephant in the room. It's relatively easy for us being a small group, and I've sat here since 2019 and sat through various, pardon Mr Bright? It would be nice for people just to listen for a time instead of giving it that. Chair?
What happened, Councillor Wing?
He's chuntering under his breath.
Just, Councillor Wing, stand and continue, please.
Thank you. It's very easy for us to sit here when we're not in power, and I've sat here since 2019, was re-elected, and we've sat through a Tory administration, a Labour administration, and we've sat here and watched those administrations have to make really hard decisions. And it's easy for us because we can sit here and we can challenge those decisions. We're not the accountable body. You are at the moment, you were previously. We don't find that easy. That's our role in opposition, to ask challenging questions. And the elephant in the room, whatever we decide to do, and we would favour 4B. We sat in that room, a couple of us wanted to abstain, some of us wanted something else, and we talked around it, and we came to the conclusion that the elephant in the room is that councils up and down the country have been starved of funding.
Yep.
And we have to sit here and watch you guys presently make really tough decisions about how you're going to spend the ever-shrinking money that the government gives you, this government and the previous government. So it's our opinion, and it is our opinion, and we're allowed to have those opinions and hopefully have those opinions respected, because I'm not going to trash anybody else's opinions in this room, and we don't do that as a group. But whatever you choose to, whatever is decided and whatever happens, because it's going to be out of our hands, it has to put residents first. It has to enable our officers to do their jobs properly and fund them. And it has to enable who's ever in power to not have to keep making tough decisions. There is no more funding coming to whatever we choose. And that's the problem we have, that until we address the issue of whoever the government is, they need to properly fund councils. This isn't going to benefit residents. I agree with unitaries. I was brought up in a unitary. The first thing I found difficult when I moved here is, what's the voting system? I've got pink sheet, blue sheet. I didn't even understand that because it's so complicated. So it will make things less complicated. But the elephant in the room is there is no additional money. So we're still going to be there. So I feel as if I'm being asked to choose between 4 different diseases, and I'm having to choose the least worst disease, because there is no more money to treat this disease. And the disease we have is local authorities have starved of funding.
Thank you. Councillor Wing, I'm glad you continued. Councillor Dawson.
Thank you, Chair. So looking at option 4B, which proposes 4 new unitary councils across Kent and Medway, with each serving around 500,000 people. While this model feels closer to communities, we must recognise its fragility. Financially, the case is weak. Transition costs estimates at 136 million, but annual savings are only between 19 and 35 million. That means a payback period of up to 15 years. In a time of tightening resources, this leaves councils exposed. Smaller councils are more vulnerable. If a surge in adult social care demand spikes, this could overwhelm one authority, where councils will have to cut services and compromise safeguarding. Or basic services such as road maintenance could falter, creating postcode lotteries across Kent. In contrast is option 3A, which offers a stronger balance. 3 unitaries, each serving around 600 to 700,000 residents, provides scale large enough to deliver statutory services efficiently, but small enough to reflect local identity. Transition costs are lower, savings arrive faster, and the payback period is reasonable at 5 to 7 years. Larger unitaries mean greater resilience to shocks, while still allowing councils to tailor their decisions to their communities. Option 3A avoids the fragility of 4 smaller councils, while preserving more local accountability than a single wide authority. 3A also offers a greater capacity to absorb shocks in adult social care and children's services, better resourced, and safeguarding is more secure. I feel personally that option 3A offers a compromise, financially sustainable, operationally resilient, and still being democratically accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Are we all done? Oh. Either one.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I'll throw my hat in the ring. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. This is obviously a massive decision that we have to undertake as a council. And as some people have quite rightly said, it's basically for the benefit of the residents. I mean, it could well be that once Thanet District Council dissolves, you know, not all of us are going to be essentially representing our residents because there won't be enough councillors. So some people could be looking at this and saying, well, you know, they've made a decision and that's it. They've washed their hands of it. Those who have stood, and those who have gone, they've left us with a really difficult, you know, situation. And I've been listening to everyone today in relation to the options we've got. And I mean, I'm always the centrist and, you know, I'm trying to think, well, yeah, you need money for a council to function. That's something you've got to do, and you have to save money. You have to look at the cost-saving methods in most things, you know, because if you don't have the money, you can't give the services, and obviously if you can't give the services, that's where, you know, residents are suffering. But in the same breath, I also feel that if we have unitaries that are slowly just larger, shall we say, then the representation for Thanet seems to dwindle. That's my fear, that if we have a larger unitary and it's split into three, we, as Thanet, which is on a peninsula and away from literally the rest of Kent, we're not going to get that voice. I mean, we could argue, everyone's throwing their hat in the ring in terms of giving their own options. Maybe we should just make our own option up and just say, yeah, 2 unitaries, 1 for Thanet, and everyone else can get on with it and give us all the money. Give us all the money, you know. But that's it. It isn't going to work, is it? I mean, yeah, exactly that, you know. I mean, all I'm going to say is just, as a councillor myself, I mean, we all have different, you know, issues. We have our own things within Thanet. You know, there's some wards that are probably busier than other wards that have their own slight issues. Sometimes I'm a glorified bin person, just doing bin reports about missed bins. Other times I am dealing with some cases actually quite, you know, severe and open up my eyes, you know, people being misplaced in housing and things like that. And, you know, we do this because we care about it. And I like to think that's a lot of us. It's not a paycheck. And that's another thing I'm concerned about. I don't want us as council, well, a big council with loads of councillors. I think people are getting a bit fed up that there's too many councillors taking them allowance. And really, there's some wards, I would argue, that could do with just snipping away with some councils. My ward, maybe. You know, that's not me saying yeah, maybe. We'll let the general population survive on that. I mean, after all my pre-rambling, I mean, I'm leaning towards a 4B option purely because from what I'm just looking at the maps here and from the information that I'm reading, I just feel this is the one that's going to give the best representation. I will wrap this up. This is probably as long as I've spoken, probably the most consistent either. Yeah, I still get my erms in though, you can cut those out. But basically, I'm in agreement with certainly towards like what some of the Green members have said, that we've been given a really difficult option, an option that nobody really wants, but we have to make a decision today, and I will be making a decision. I do support the evolution. You know, we've had a really difficult tier system where we're having to go through 3 tiers of government onto a parish level. We can at least snip that away. So thank you for listening to me, and there you go, that's my 2 cents, so people can say that I don't give any. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very, very much. It's entertaining, if nothing else. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and, it's hard act to follow, Councillor Scott, but I'll try and be brief. I've been a supporter of creating an East Kent unitary for some time. But I do agree with what has been said in this chamber, particularly by Councillor Austin, and that I do think this has been rushed. I don't really think that the timescales for the creation of a unitary here are actually going to be met. Many of the areas in the priority programme have now been pushed back, and they're talking about potentially holding county council elections in many of those areas, because it looks like only Surrey will have these shadow elections in May of this year. So that doesn't fill me with much hope that any of this or all of this for our area will actually come in before the next general election, whenever that may be. That being said, I do appreciate that there are many benefits for option B, and I do think that culturally we are more aligned with Canterbury and with Dover. I think that is very clear. My main concern, though, is not only about financial viability, because smaller unitaries up and down the country are already in place, they're already in place now, are struggling. Many of them aren't financially stable, and I do believe that a larger East Kent unitary, along the lines of what we were trying to do with the shared services and potentially creating a super district council, East District Council many years ago, I think financially stacks up. And I think that what we will find is when this decision is made by the government, it will actually be the Treasury that will have a lot of a say, as it did in Surrey. And I suspect that they will potentially go with the option 3A, the free unitary model. That's the reason why I can't support 4B. I wish that I could be voting on option 3A, but I do wish that when the government then decides for this to go to consultation, that it's a responsibility of all of us here, not just the officers of Thanet District Council, but all of us as councillors, to ensure that our residents understand what is going on and that we encourage them to take part in the process, whichever option any of us feel is the best. Because as we know, participation is key for any decision, and we always say that in that, you know, even tonight, the public gallery is almost empty. Very few people do watch our meetings, even if it's mainly because Councillor Davis talks too much, so they don't watch them. But that's why I think it's really important that we go out there and we make sure that the information is shared with residents far and wide, and that we're talking within parish council meetings and town council meetings and everything, because it's really important. This is the biggest change to local government in 50 years. Many of us weren't around back then. So I think it's really important that we kind of get out there and we kind of make sure that people take part, because whilst the minister can make the overarching decision, we still need to make sure that people have their voices, at least their voices is heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Councillor Pritchard.
Yeah, Councillor Pritchard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say that I think we need to consider both what's best for our area, but also, due to the way the decision is being made, we do need to pick one which will be effectively easiest to argue for to central government. And having grown up in Whitstable, which is obviously in the Canterbury City Council, I can definitely see the argument for putting Faversham in with East Kent, but I think with the options and the fact that we do need to make the case to central government, I think 4B, with all four councils offering at least 400,000 people, and the fact it doesn't actually split any existing districts, I think will be the easiest to make our case. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Councillor Everett, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comments around the chamber, which I think have all been measured and of interest. I mean, I would just say in terms of speed, which Councillor Austin referred to, this has been an incredibly slow process because it should have happened in 1974. And I think if Edward Heath hadn't won the 1970 general election, it probably would have done. So I'm not sure speed is how I would characterise the process. I'd also say what we've got doesn't work well. We all know it doesn't work well. We all know it causes confusion and inefficiency. We all know that this council is too small to be resilient when it faces the kind of issues that do arise around the harbour and the port, for example. We need to fix that as soon as possible, and I think putting a bit of pressure on ourselves to get that done quickly is a good thing from the government. I don't think waiting around another year or 2 years. I hear what Councillor Pugh says about it may not be done in time. Well, we'll see, won't we? That's not what the civil servants are saying to us. We will do our bit. And I think also we want the benefits of devolution. The whole county wants the benefits of devolution. It's the one thing that all of the leaders from all of the parties have talked about, and we can't have that until we have unitary authorities. It wouldn't have made any sense at all to have a combined authority made up of Kent and Medway. Did make that point when that was on the table. Didn't happen. The government reached that conclusion, but we can't be left behind the rest of England. The government wants to regularise the situation with local government across England. I think that's the right thing to do. I think that this terribly messy system that we've had for any number of years doesn't really serve the public well. And yes, it may be possible to make more savings by having bigger councils, but the reality is that democracy comes at a price, and if we value democracy, then we have to pay that price. I think we can deliver more efficient services as a unitary authority, and I think if you went out there and spoke to people in Thanet, they're not interested in this debate. You're quite right, they're not in the council chamber, but I'm telling you now, there's not a big call out there for retaining Thanet District Council, and I don't say that personally on my behalf, on behalf of any of us. People want a more efficient local government system that they can understand. Now, whether they'll be disappointed when it arrives, because they'll find other reasons to blame, and they'll complain about power being in Canterbury or wherever it is in the future, I'm sure they will. But I do think that we can deliver a better system, and I think that this is progress towards it. And I will just say about Surrey, it is of a particularly challenging one for the government because of the situation with Woking Borough Council and its enormous debt which it managed to run up, far bigger than county councils and unitary authorities. And Surrey's been given 500 million. Well, if the government liked to give us 500 million, I think we could all get on with it tomorrow. Anyway, thank you for the debate.
Thank you. So we're going to go to the vote now. So we're voting for option 4B. If you agree, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you disagree, please raise your hand. Thank you. And if you abstain, please raise your hand. So it is agreed. Thank you, Council. Moving on to the next item, selective licensing. Request for additional resources. Councillor Whitehead, this is yours.
Thank you, Chair. There's often a tendency to view our council housing functions in Thanet through a very limited window of our provision of council and social housing and the protection of tenants within those homes. We take our responsibilities exceptionally seriously in respect to the provision of council housing and the quality of the housing that we provide, but our duties extend far beyond that and are due to extend even further with the introduction of the Renters' Rights Act. We currently expect that the introduction of the Act will increase private rented sector cases by over 25%, and it is exceptionally important that we ensure high quality private rented accommodation by methods such as selective licensing. We are able to protect our own tenants and ensure the quality and affordability of their accommodation. But there are a significant number of Thanet residents who currently rent within the private sector and have far lower levels of statutory protection than those within social housing. These issues are real. During 886 private rental sector inspections, our officers identified 3,446 serious hazards. Fire at 944 and damp and mould at 735 are the most common hazard types identified. We have also issued one or more housing and public health notices in respect of 738 separate properties to rectify substandard conditions and management issues. A large proportion of Thanet's housing was built pre-1900. These homes are least likely to be energy efficient, with 4,020 private rented properties in Thanet being likely to have at least one serious housing Category 1 or high scoring Category 2 hazard. Our housing condition survey also identified 3,695 private rented properties with EPC ratings that are E, F and G. EPC ratings E, F and G represent properties with the least energy efficiency. The wards with the highest number of EPC ratings of E to G include Cliftonville West at 617 and Central Harbour at 433. Both of which are included in the preliminary proposed licensing scheme. Those of us familiar with housing casework will recognise this picture and the circumstances of those families and individuals affected by housing conditions such as this. And the reality remains that the responsibility for finding, supporting and remedying these hazards lies with us. Serving and protecting these residents is essential, as is recognising the work of private landlords who are delivering high quality and affordable housing, including to those facing homelessness in Thanet. In recognition of this, we are looking at instituting specific support and discounts to landlords who are providing accommodation to those families and individuals on our homelessness list. Local housing authorities are empowered under the Housing Act 2004 to introduce selective licensing in all or parts of their area to tackle problems in the private rented sector. The criteria for selective licensing is important, and the criteria used in the designations developed links directly to the Housing Act 2004 and MHCLG guidance. The 8 wards chosen for selective licensing designation have been chosen because they meet the criteria required. Firstly, one of 6 specific criteria must be met. Here, we are trying to address both deprivation and poor housing conditions. Secondly, we must be satisfied that no other course of action could produce the same objectives, and that the designation is consistent with our overall housing strategy and part of a coordinated approach to address the identified issues. And the wards proposed must have more than 19% of housing within the private rented sector. With this in mind, 8 wards have been identified. The areas have a predicted higher amount of poor housing conditions in comparison with the national average, and are in the 30% most deprived areas in England, with 4 areas being in the 10% most deprived areas in England. The 8 wards form 2 distinct areas in Margate and Ramsgate. The wards include Central Harbour, Cliftonville West, Eastcliff, Margate Central, Newington, Salmston, Sir Moses Montefiore and Westbrook. An estimated 12,625 privately rented homes would be affected by the proposed designations, 7,055 in Margate and 5,570 in Ramsgate. Persons from vulnerable groups can find themselves particularly affected by poor quality private rented accommodation, as they often have limited housing choices. In particular, families with young children, older persons and those with a disability can find themselves in poor quality rented accommodation, and therefore selective licensing often involves safeguarding the health, safety and welfare of those protected characteristics. Minimising disadvantage and promoting the welfare of those with protected characteristics, especially whilst improving housing conditions, is a significant priority for this administration. In recognition of this, I recommend that full council approve a £190,000 budget to progress proposals for selective licensing, as set out in this report, to be funded from the Investor Save Reserve. Consider the financial risk of using funds that may not be recovered if the selective licensing designations do not proceed. I move the recommendations set out in the report, and apologies for overrunning, Chair.
Thank you. Apology accepted. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bright, thank you. Okay, opening this up to the floor, I'm going to start off with Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. The Renters' Rights Act. Is that better? The Renters' Rights Act received raw assent on the 27th of October. It gives tenants far more rights and security on their tenanture. So tenants no longer have to be concerned about complaining about disrepair. As previously they were concerned, they would get section 21. I'll do it without the mic. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, you need to use the mic. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I'll just go down. Is that better? How's that? Tenants no longer have the fear of Section 21 notices because now they have a process. Tenants can make complaints in safe in the knowledge that they will not be evicted. The introduction of selective licence schemes to improve housing conditions is therefore, I don't feel, is necessary. The renters' rights also make provision for a property ombudsman. This will allow tenants to make complaints about poor conditions and failure to carry out repairs. Tenants can make complaints and receive compensation without the fear of being evicted. Rather than introduce selective licence schemes, Thanet Council should be really telling tenants of the new laws and their rights. My concern is, first of all, that this will become a permanent cost for the council. Secondly, it's going to be tax on the tenants because these costs will be passed on inevitably to the tenants. Another concern is that, as we know before, there are several local landlords who intend to challenge this in the High Courts on a judicial review, which also could then risk the council with quite a lot of money.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Rattigan has summed up a lot of the points that I wanted to make, but it is about how is this going to improve things within that sector, because simply a broad brush approach like this is nothing more than a tax on the landlord, which is then going to get passed through to the tenant. And ironically, the lower demographics, the wards that we're talking about, are often populated by the people who are at the lowest end of our income scale and are therefore in receipt of benefit. The landlord increases the rent, the local housing allowance requirement goes up because the tenant will increase their claim, and it's a self-defeating spiral if we're not careful. What concerns me, and again, I can see that there is an argument for it, but I really don't think, I do think it's just a tax on the landlord. However, we're talking about, this is a survey as part of an ongoing process to see whether we want to decide to proceed in that direction. So I think it's utterly ludicrous, particularly given the comments that everyone's been making tonight about lack of resources, that having spent 50,000 to date, we're considering another 190,000 without a dedicated commitment to an outcome from it. That's just to see if we think it could be viable. And I think it's completely wrong to be considering spending that money in this situation as we head into the next couple of years and the processes. So let's not disadvantage the landlord. Let's not make life harder for the tenant. But let's applaud the teams that have been out. And as you said, they've clearly found an awful lot of instances. So let's get enforcement going on those and continue to support the tenants with our housing, with our private housing team, as opposed to trying to have a broad brush that just penalises everybody and achieves nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually on behalf of Councillor Munns, who can't be here this evening, but who asked me to...
Sorry, just to interrupt you. Councillor Davis, will you turn your mic off, please?
Sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Munns asked me if I could ask this question. It follows on really from what Councillor Rattigan said, which is, would it not be sensible for us to postpone enacting this until we see the outcome of the Renters' Rights Bill? That will only be a few months. It would allow us to perhaps take this cost out of next year's budget rather than this year's, and things might settle down in such a way that there was less need for it. I'm no expert on this, but Councillor Munns knows a great deal more about it than I do. Personally, from a Central Harbour point of view, I think we'd welcome any help we can get. But I did promise Councillor Munns that I would ask that. Thank you.
If you're asking me, we go forward, but I will ask Councillor Whitehead to answer that in her summing up. Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. You can always argue to postpone these things, but I support these moves because when TDC first introduced selective licensing many years ago now, I argued that introducing it in the small area that it was introduced then was too small, and it would displace the problem to other parts of Thanet. And lo and behold, that's just what it's done, with Eastcliff and Central Harbour in Ramsgate now being some of the most deprived wards in the area, whereas where the selective licensing was, has now improved considerably. So I support this larger area, and I think we should get on with it as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Councillor Everett.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It does occur to me, I hope that anybody here who is a landlord in the wards that are in the report would feel that they needed to declare an interest tonight. Obviously, there is nobody in that situation because nobody's declared an interest in this item that I heard, so that's reassuring, isn't it? Yeah, the Renters' Rights Act, obviously a good piece of legislation. I mean, it's good to hear support from Councillor Rattigan for it. But we have a deeply dysfunctional housing market. We have people living in appalling conditions, and we as the local authority, in my opinion, have a duty to protect them, and this legislation and this scheme gives us the opportunity to do that. The reason for spending 190,000 is precisely to protect the council from the risk of judicial review and challenge, and to make sure that we take the proposal forward in the proper way, and that we are put ourselves in the best position to resist any legal risk. I mean, I accept that there are many good landlords in Thanet who will do a good job by their tenants and will be penalised by a selective licensing scheme, but the reality is there are many rotten landlords in Thanet who need to be chased down, and this council does not have the resources to do that in its private housing team at the moment, and a selective licensing scheme will allow us to do that, and therefore I fully support taking it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to speak? No. Councillor Whitehead, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. In reference to both councillors mentioning the Renters' Right Act, I believe that's Councillor Rattigan and Councillor Munns, who is unable to be here. As I mentioned in the introduction, we're expecting to see a 30% increase in what we do, precisely because we will be the ones enforcing the Renters' Rights Act. So it's brilliant that those protections are there, but we are the ones who will have to do that. And so trying to put in place preventative measures in terms of ensuring that we have a base standard of accommodation that we already expect landlords to abide by is really, really important in a situation when we know that demand for our services is going to rise considerably. In terms of costs being passed on to tenants, again, it's a fairly unpleasant thing to think about in terms of landlords doing this, especially it would be the equivalent of £3.8 per week or £12.32 a month. And it's also worth noting, as I believe Councillor Green mentioned, for both Margate Central and Cliftonville West, the introduction and continuance of the selective licensing system saw very significant increases in property values within those areas. So there is more than one scale to be balanced in that sense. In terms of us bringing this request forward, as Councillor Everett said, if we are going to bring this forward, especially as we are designating over 20% of our area as part of the selective licensing designation, this case has to go before the Ministry. So we have to ensure that we are as well prepared as we can be, because, as someone mentioned, there may be landlords who do decide to judicially review it. We are very concerned for the health of our tenants, both in our properties and in the private sector. So we will ensure that we are as well defended on that front as possible. So it's very much not a will we, won't we. We are choosing to pursue this, and we need to make sure that our evidence base is as strong as possible when we do so. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll vote on this then. So those in favour of Councillor Whitehead's proposal, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. And those who abstain? Thank you. That was agreed. Thank you. That concludes the business for this extraordinary meeting of the Council. I have to tell you, though, that immediately after this meeting is going to be a Cabinet meeting. So if you could vacate this room as quick as you can, unless you're in the Cabinet, then please do. See you next time.